so that we can begin their particular session. So I think since morning there's been a lot of talk on the need for young people to participate, to contribute, to engage, to make the numbers work for them, to be active citizens, among other ideas around how they can improve or strengthen their agency. So we are now moving into a session, which is going to be a plenary session on profiling youth engagement with the Parliament. We are just waiting for one more member who is supposed to join that particular panel. But I think in the interest of time, we will allow panel to proceed. Media guys, can you give me a signal if you are ready for the panel session? Fantastic. All right, so belief, leader, and also Gladys. This is the opportunity to engage with the few members of Parliament that we still have here, and also the youth, in terms of some of the work that you have been doing with regards to championing youth engagement in the Parliament. So allow me to recognize to speak first, Leader Zaba, who's coming from Materreland South, where he's working with CYDT. Thank you very much.
Thank you, McDonald. As I said, my name is Lita Zaba. Lita, not being a title, but actually a name. I don't know why they gave me that name. I just embraced it. Okay, so like you said, I work for an organization called CYTT, Community Youth Development Trust. I think our work has been referred to as our honorable members were giving their presentations from the morning up until now. So as an organization, our main focus is on youth, that is people aged from the ages of 18 up until 35. So we provide youth spaces with their leadership so that they can come together and talk about issues that affect them as youth. As a result, as an organization, we took it upon ourselves to also petition the Parliament of Zimbabwe. And let me say this before I talk about what the petition was saying. The response from Parliament was really commendable, to the extent that they really gave us an hearing ear, and also they provided a platform for us to come and give all our evidence of our petition. And as they were presenting, I think some of the fruits of the petition are actually being visible, as it can be evidenced by the crafting of the youth bill. I would like to believe that we also contributed to that. So our petition was mostly derived from the proposed constitutional amendment, which was going to see 10 youths being added into the Parliament on proportional basis. We welcomed this new initiative. However, we felt that with the current numbers, like what we were saying this morning, that it is not enough, more can be done. We then pushed for a 30% quota system, which is supported by an Act of Parliament, which I think from the Parliament deliberations, but then toned it down to something like 25, which I think is a start. If we can prove that we deserve that 25%, then I think in future we might be given the stakes that represents what you are doing right now. So the rationale for our petition was that we as youth form the large population of the country. Yes, 10% doesn't really reflect that. So we then proposed that the 30%, like I said, this was derived from the fact that if we look at how our parliament is composed in terms of representations from MPs, you can find out that from one province there are over 15 MPs. Yet we say only one MP is supposed to represent a province, which really doesn't make sense. So we then petition the government to at least give us at least 3 per province. In that way, the province might be better covered. Therefore, the petition requests that there was need to protect the constitutionally granted right of the youths to be fully represented, as can be evidenced in Section 20 of the Constitution, which was alluded by our chairperson of this committee here present, which gives the rights to youth at all levels to be represented in all spheres of life. And also, we need to ensure that youth empowerment comes with a legislation framework, which is an act of parliament. I think this has been alluded to quite more often in this meeting. So basically, that is our petition, which was derived from the proposed amendment that's supposed to be 10 years. And our petition was in response to that, which I think the response has been really forthcoming. And with what was said here, if that is not a talk show, I think we are in line to benefit immensely from that. Thank you, Dr. Long.
All right, thank you very much, Leader Zama. As we move forward, we give recognition to Gladys Samson, who is joining the panel from National West, to also maybe share with us some of the local initiatives which they are doing in their community that are trying to give urgency and voice to young people when it comes to parliamentary processes. Ladies?
Good afternoon. As Mashonaland West, we have managed to work well with Nayo, and this we did through what we call a constitutional hub. So we have a constitutional hub in Chinoy, so far with 40 members. This is whereby we're having youth from different wards levels coming together with different perceptions of what the youth are going through around Mashonaland West. And these matters, they're discussed there during meetings. And we have held 3 accountability meetings where we invited local leaders like the councillors, mayors, MPs, and even Dr. Mataruse himself. Youth have also written petitions about clinics in Alaska, for example, where issues about the clinic being short-staffed, and we had a positive result. The local government acted and resolved the issue. And we have had pre-sensitization on the amendment bill, and Public Finance Management Act Amendment Bill, Takaita under Zimcode, but most people have. The constitutional hubs were citizen-led platforms. As such, the hubs are safe spaces at the community level in which socially excluded groups, for example, women, youth, persons with disabilities, and minority groups meet on a regular basis at the community level to build their knowledge and agency around constitutional matters. The hubs will be composed of constitutionalism champions, advocates at the community level that will continually raise awareness on constitutional matters using appropriate approaches. This is a success in Mashonaland West. We're seeing a number of people coming out with several issues that are affecting them, and we're solving the matters by just telling them what the parliament has for them and what the constitution has for them. So we've got people who are now aware of their rights, people who are now aware of their responsibilities, and therefore with the information they have, they know how to channel their queries if they have. So that is going quite well in Mashonaland West. And I'm going to look at the reasons why most people were not coming forward. You find that my youth of today, they don't have time, which worries us most. Because we're saying we've got that generation of people, I don't have time for this. I would rather be on TV or be on my Instagram page rather than working on the issues that are actually affecting them as my youth. So we have my youth very ignorant. It hurts, yes, but that's what's really happening to Mash West. And I'm sure that throughout Zimbabwe, the reason why we're having my youth come out is because they think they've got time. They're too special to come out. That's why they don't find it important to be part and parcel of the policies and the lawmaking in this country. It hurts. The second, most youth have no idea. We found that from where I come from, the people who are actually knowing what is going on around them are those who chase for information. If you're not worried about the information, then you will never know kuti kune ikunze. So we're having they just grow like you have no vision. You're not worried about mangwana. You're just that person who is carefree. You do what you want to do, and that's it for them, and they're okay with it, which is very problematic because we're having vanhu vekuti they can spend all day. Economically, physically, socially, financially, they're just doing nothing. And these are the type of people we have. And it's a call, it's an awakening call to us, semi youth. We should do something about it. Even at what level, try to engage. If you're open enough to get information, tell others to tell others. That's how we can have my youth very fully equipped in information. And we having problem reaching out. Our representation, we're not having one to the lowest levels. And this worries me, Kuti. Why are we being represented by people who seem not to care? Because if people are passionate about us as youth, if people are so concerned, access, why are you guys not going to the lowest grassroots throughout Zimbabwe? It's a call itself, and it's applied for us semi-youth. We need information in as much as we are equipped, access, town and all. What happens kumusha? They are still human beings. They have a future. They have a future to prepare. And the only way they can do that, Zimbabwe. Do not leave them out in your policies. Tell them about the policies. Tell them about the constitution. Tell them about the good news. Do not be so selfish with the information you have, so much that you can share it to the lowest person who has a generation to cater for tomorrow. And the other reason is most people who have information, they are not in capacity to implement the information they have. This is so true where I come from. You find that people who have access to information, like myself per se, you don't have time. I may be at work, Or if I'm not at work, I'm at school. So I don't have time to be telling the next youth what is going on. Ndo pari kutorasika vana veZimbabwe vakawanda kuti vanhu vacho vane information. They are not having enough time to implement what they know, to share what they know to the next person. So I would like to have a generation of very concerned, people who can implement zvavadzidza. If you come here, if you learn about the policies, don't just sit on that information. Go and teach it to the next person so that we benefit takawanda. Not what we're going to have vanhu benefit just a few people and information yacho is implementable. Then we'll have more meetings and less action by the background upon development. And whereas Zimbabwe isina kwainoenda because tinongodzidza nekudzidza but chinenge chaitopa ground hapana. And then my youth mazhinji ku Mashonaland West, they have that fear of the unknown. This is something chekuti unotoshamisika kuti munhu anototya kuita come out pachinhu chasati ambotrya out. You have never been to a meeting, yet ukanzwa kuti there's a meeting going on pakati unototi maiwe kunoenda vana nhingi. Come out as youth. Be fearless. You can do it. Motivate mega. We're having my youth kuti munhu anodzikisira munhu. Haukwanisi kuudza munhu kuti you're good enough. That's why we're having my youth very so vulnerable. They can't come out because vanototya kuti the next person is going to judge me for my so-called disability yemukati. Ignore that. You are better than that. You can't be hiding your whole life. Come out. This fear of the unknown iri kutapula kumaZimbabwean youth akawanda. Usatye chinhu chausati wambotrya. Zviri nani wotrya and that thing fails. Yeah, it's better. Utori nani pane munhu asina kutombozama. And the other thing, the reason why most people don't actually come out is because they have poor lines of communication. At school, information inouya, yes, but iri kuuya kunani? Zviri kufamba sei? At school, the channel is not even clear enough. We do not understand kuti, is this thing for my youth? Kana kuti. That's the thing with Import Bank. Pane zvinhu zvavanoita zvezvita muZimbabwe. Unotozonzwa nemumatoita mari otozoti takatopiwa mari dzeImport Bank dzaitopiwa mayouth around Zimbabwe. And if you do not know manje usina that link communication, then you are left out. Vanhu vanosinkira vashoma because the way how people are communicating, ipapo tachikumbirawo kuti if you're going to be discussing your matters, please, the way how you communicate has got to be straight. Musaita kunge you want people to know, but you don't want them to know. If you want us to know, give us the information. We're cool with it. If you don't want us to know, yeah, it hurts, but you don't want us to know. Those niggas shiri. And this is how we think young people should be working with the parliament. Young people should engage the parliament through petitions. You don't just wake up just as you imagine it. Things have to work through a channel. So if they work through a channel, you follow that channel because you are just a citizen. And then we would want to have more live interactions with the parliament members. We need those one-on-ones. With the COVID-19, yes, it's been so hard. So if I call a minister, they might not be around. And if I try to reach another person, they're not around. So in as much as we're having representation, yeah, vanhu veparliament, tachikumbirawo dai maikwanisa kutita even a meeting. Call us, and then we tell you our stories. At least tikangonzwa kuti aiwa takanzwikwa nyaya yedu yakasvika, we are cool with it. Zvekuti makazoita henyu ndizvo zvawo. It's not everything that gets to be implemented. That's life. But please hear our plea. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Gladys Sampson, I think, for that moving presentation and also, passionately telling us some of the work that you're doing within your own communities in National and West, and I think also making that passionate plea to the members of Parliament in terms of actualizing engagement with young people. Allow me at this point in time to acknowledge and recognize Mr. Quota, who is joining the panel from Kadoma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Like you have heard, my name is Quota. I come from Kadoma. I am going to share with you the experience that I've had in my engagement with Parliament. I have had engagements with Parliament on 2 occasions. The first occasion was in 2018, in the year 2018, in October, after a thorough reading of Section 20 of the Constitution. I actually learned that government institutions at every level have certain obligations that are outlined in Section 20, which they must fulfill to the benefit of the young people. So when I read that section, I then started to think that it appears that there is no one who can enforce to ensure that state institutions, the government institutions at every level are complying in fulfilling the obligations that are set out in Section 20. So I then started to think of a way of coming up with a mechanism to ensure that Section 20 is being complied with. So I realized that the other method that we can use is that Section 149 of the Constitution allows even a member of the public to petition Parliament. So I then adopted to use that route to petition Parliament in terms of Section 149 as a member of the public. So on the 1st of November, I sent my petition. Before I sent my petition, I actually visited Parliament and requested for a copy of the book for the standing orders and the rules for me to understand the nature, how the petition is drafted in terms of their standing orders, for me to meet the requirements. So I then actually wrote my petition in line with Section 149 and the Parliamentary rules and standing orders. On the 1st of November 2018, I sent my petition to Parliament via email. I didn't come to surrender it to Parliament. I sent it via email on the 1st of November 2018. And guess what? On the 14th of November, the same year, just about 2 weeks, when I was watching television, that live program, the Parliamentary, the Wednesday question and answer program, I was surprised to realize that the Speaker of Parliament was actually making an announcement in Parliament to say, Parliament, I received a petition from Mr. Quota, and that petition has already been handed over to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Youth. So that actually told me that Parliament is effective. Imagine a petition that is being sent via email. There's no follow-up call. I didn't make a follow-up call. I just sent via email. Within 2 weeks, I'm hearing an announcement in Parliament, and the Speaker is not saying we have just received it, but has already actioned on the petition to say the petition is already in the hands of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Youth. So I want to applaud Parliament in their effectiveness. Firstly, in that they have grasped technology. It appears when you send something via email, they are very quick to notice, because I sent my petition via email. So in terms of their grasping technology, I really want to commend Parliament. Then also in the way that Parliament responded in terms of time frame, I find that Parliament responded so fast. So I also want to commend them on that. So within a few weeks after the Speaker had announced, Parliament dispatched the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee to various places country-wide for consultations, to consult on the views of other young people concerning my petition. They went to Ngundu, they went to Gweru, they went to Bulawayo, they went to Gwanda, they went to Kadoma, they went to Harare, they went to Wedza, and they went to Mtare. In addition to countrywide consultation that they held, they also invited the Minister of Youth to get oral evidence from the minister. They got oral evidence from the Community Youth Development Trust, from the Zimbabwe Youth Council, from YET and other various organizations. So I want to commend Parliament, in addition to receiving so fast, they acted so fast and effectively. They went to various places countrywide, doing consultations to find out if my view was being supported by the other young people. So I would like to appreciate and commend Parliament for that. So after consultations and oral evidence, Parliament then came up with a report which was presented in Parliament, and the recommendations were made. And one of the recommendations that were made was that the Minister of Youth should endeavor to strengthen the Youth Council by ensuring that the full secretariat headed by an executive director is in place by June 2020. So they then came up with the recommendations to the Minister of Youth to say the Zimbabwe Youth Council should be in place by such with timeframes. That was so effective, and I really commend Parliament for that. In addition, they also made various other recommendations, including the recommendation that the Zimbabwe Youth Council should be decentralized by April 2020 to what level. So these are some of the recommendations. Then they also made another long-term recommendation to say that the Youth Commission should be included in the Constitution, like every other independent commission is mentioned in Chapter 12 of the Constitution. Last but not least, the conclusion that was made, which I really like about the petition that I made in 2018, is that Parliament then made a conclusion that there is need of legislation to do with youth empowerment. They made a recommendation that the youth bill should be in place. So they then actually recommended the Minister of Youth to come up with a bill as soon as possible. And the minister, fortunately, actually quickly responded to what Parliament had instructed, and came up with the principles which were then approved by Cabinet. So I'm really happy that for the youth bill to come, now that the youth bill is in place, it was because I had petitioned Parliament listened, and actually they pushed the minister to come up with a bill. So I really want to thank the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Youth, Arts, Sports, and Recreation. Really did it. I even continue to encourage them that they continue to make follow-ups to ensure that the bill becomes an act. Because as you know, that if a bill does not pass to graduate to become an act within the time frame of this 9th Parliament, then it will lapse. It will not proceed when we go to the 10th Parliament. So this is something we have to achieve before 2023 to ensure that the youth bill becomes an act of Parliament. So this is the work that we have. My second engagement with Parliament is that currently I'm the interim president of the Zimbabwe Youth Promotion Corporation. So as the Zimbabwe Youth Promotion Corporation, we realize that most city councils or rural councils, they are not really adhering or complying with Section 20, of which they are an agent. All councils are an agent of Parliament, of government at a lower level. So Section 20 compels all government institutions, including agents of the government, that is to say, city councils included, rural councils included, they also have to comply with Section 20. But we realize that they are not complying. So most of the town clerks and mayors, they are not even aware of the provision, the Section 20 provision. They are not even aware that there is such a provision in the Constitution. So we then thought of how can we enforce, since Parliament has an oversight role, we then petitioned Parliament to ensure that that city councils are compelled to empower young people. You know, when people are applying for tax shops or spaces for shops, you will find that the way it is done in city councils is that people apply, they write letters to the committee, the works committee or the housing committee within the councils. And most of the business people, those big business people that are already established, they are the ones who use money to lure people that are in that committee so that the issue is brought as an agenda on full council. So the young person who would have applied for a shop, that his application is not brought to the attention on full council. But you find that someone who would have actually, who has money to oil the people in that committee, you find that their applications are head faster than the young people who have no establishment to actually oil the people in the committee. So this is the petition that we presented. We presented it in October, a week after we were invited to Parliament to present oral evidence. So you find that even on this second petition that I'm mentioning, a week after we were invited to present oral evidence, the Parliament is still handling the issue on the way forward. So these are the two engagements that I have personally had with Parliament, and I can certainly say if you can work with Parliament, especially the 9th Parliament that is current, it actually responds fast and effectively. So I really commend them and encourage the young people to continue engage Parliament. Then the last thing that I need to share, as a person who is coming from Mashonaland West province, I have also been tasked to also share on some of the things that Parliament can do to help in the community that I come from. You know, Kadoma or Mashonaland West, we come from a mining area. The challenge that the young people are having currently is that in terms of the law, the Mines and Mineral Act, because most of them, they are engaging in mining activities. In terms of the law, when one pegs a mine or a claim, a gold claim, they should be issued with a certificate or the registration certificate within 30 days. But due to some reasons, you will find that people who have applied in 2018, up to now, they have not received their registration certificates. Even those that are pegging their claims this year, you will find that it may take 2 years, 3 years for them to get their registration certificate. It seems that maybe the PMD level or the Ministry of Mines level, there is no effectiveness. And what that means is that for the past 2018 up to now, there are no young people who are pegging claims for them to start to be productive and operational. So they just peg. After pegging, they cannot work because they do not have a registration certificate. They wait 3 or 4 years without production. And during that time, that is the time when they will end up going kunoita zvechikorokoza zvezvekuti pamunozonzwa vanhu vakuroona nemabhemba bcause vakuenda pakapegwa nevamwe kudhara ivo avo maregistration haasi kuitika and zvakukonzera disorder. So I think it is one area, especially in my area, where Parliament can intervene. I would like to thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quota, I think for engaging and sharing with us the work that you are doing in Mashonaland West. But more importantly, I think some of your efforts, which have activated the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Youth to make the kind of progress which even today it has made, where it has become a champion for driving issues of youth representation, youth empowerment. And I think I liked from the presentation that Believe made that, the reference that he made, to say that he didn't even have to go to the Parliament and submit the petition. He just emailed it to Parliament. And the Parliament responded. And I think in his presentation, he also gave reference to how effective our own Parliament is in terms of that particular regard. And I think also more importantly, he was also able to show and demonstrate, from his narration, how responsive the parliament has been. An entire portfolio committee going across the provinces because a young person has raised his concern. I think this is what we are trying to motivate and encourage each other as we move forward with this particular conference. Allow me to recognize and also acknowledge Madame Elaine Chiezemaniere, who's also joining us from National West, to also share at international level some of the work that young people have been doing to try and engage and also work with the parliament. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you. So for us, we as a member with Nayo, so there was a petition that was sent to Parliament on 31 March 2021. The petition was on youth eligibility for public office in Zimbabwe. The petition was sent to Parliament on 31 May, and the aim of the petition is to make sure that youth are not discriminated on the basis of age for them to be able to be in public office. Because we realize that with the constitution, it makes it clear under section 67, where it specifically says that any citizen who is over the age of 18 has the right to stand for public office and if elected to hold such an office. But however, within the constitution, there is some level of failure to have the alignment with this provision, whereby they then say there's a section that then says it's section 121, which then says that for one them to be eligible to be voted for, they have to be 21 years of age. And for one to be within the Senate or a parliamentary candidate, they have to be 21. And there is also a limit for one to be a Senate candidate to at least 40 years of age, as well as at the level of presidential level. For one to be a candidate to be at presidential level, they have to be 40. So that means that there is that level of discrimination in terms of age. How can it be cheerleaders for those we ourselves can't be in these positions? So the petition he was talking about, we want it to be, if we're talking about 18 being the age of eligibility, let it be for everything, not to then limit people on who then gets to be able to be voted into public office. So after the presentation of the petition, the evidence was presented to the Parliament on 23 May. That's when the Parliament asked Nayo to make the presentation of the evidence, and for now we're still waiting for the Parliament to respond to that, so that we have a way forward from there. And I'd like to applaud what has been done by Honorable Tongofa, who is the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee chairperson for the youth, for acknowledging that 10% is not enough for us as the youth, and at least going up to 25, and making sure that he makes it clear to the Minister of Justice that the bill should be amended, and it's something that should come to fruition, that we should be able to see that. And I also liked how he also gave time limits, a time frame to the minister when he said by December 2021. So that means this is supposed to be done this year, which shows that the Parliament is not just working on saying things, but working with time frames. It also shows the level of commitment within that committee. It won't work. But if we say and we give things more time frames, it means that the committee is already committed in seeing the youth progressing and seeing the youth develop. So as now at national level, we saw it's necessary my youth to include in discrimination in terms of age. tiregedzeiwo titotangawo vanhu vatange mapolitical parties avo maybe at 18 if they can, without limiting them kuti kana azosvika 40 kuakasasvika 40 akaita sajesu akafira pa33. So we also need to go there. We also need to antimati, we have to leave a legacy. Let us be able to leave our own legacies without the laws limiting us on what we are capable to do and what we cannot do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Elaine, for passionately engaging us and also sharing on the work
that you have been doing with other young people in terms of raising your concerns to Parliament, and for speaking so passionately also to that. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, at this moment in time, to acknowledge Lady Samson, Lady Quota, Leader Zaba, and also Elaine Chieta for sharing with us the kind of nuggets that they've shared with us in as far as it is practical and also possible and also feasible for us as young people to work with the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Can we give them one round of applause as they come to And as they are coming to sit down, allow me to invite Richard to come up front. He's going to give us a musical interlude for about 10 or so minutes, and then we move to the next session. Thank you.
Is what Shamini says that let people are known as inspirational beings. And it is not a struggle without motivation and singing that relaxes the mind. So I'll ask you to join me. And as youth, we should know that in this fight, we should be ready for anything. And we should remind our parents that they should not worry about us, for we are ready to face anything when we go into the struggles and when we go into the forests of the struggle. Oh, Amaina Baba, Musa Dichebe, Kanada Fa, Neondo, Ntininda Kazida, Shandira Mayuthi, Pamwechete, Nevamwe. Amaina Baba, Musandi Chime, Kanada Fa, Neudo, Tininda Kazida, Shandira Mayuti, Pamwitete, Nafano, Akumbira Guatimu, Fabe Sakanaka. Kana napinda musango, sango ine shumba, sango ine kwena, sango ine kurapse, sango ine shumba, sango ine kwena, wemberi wemberi, weshure weshure, alala alala alala, alala alala, awe maitawe. As youth, we should be known for our energy. We are now lazy and clubs, and they seem like the old people who are now getting ready to rest. I'll ask you one more time to stand up as you sing this one and remind you that in this struggle that we are fighting as the youth, one of the most important things is we fight is solidarity. We do not exist in a vacuum, and we will need each other so that we attain the goals and objectives that we have. Oh, Ama, 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 Yam, Ama, 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 Yam, Ama, Ama, Yam, Ama, Yama, Yam, Maki, Ama, Yam, Ama, Ama, Yam, Goika, Ama, Yam, Ama, Yama, Yam, Ama, Ama, Yam, Ama,
Ahoy.
I'm telling him to understand. Are you tired? Are you hungry? What's happening? What's wrong?
We're a charity case.
But then it's not be a charity case when it comes to our own motivation. It then becomes difficult for me to continue singing when the people are not willing to cooperate and you seem to be asleep. Should you organize plays for you guys?
No, we're going to sing.
Moro imo usemo se ae amakaki ae tiempo ae atuno sangana Zimbabwe. Moro imo usemo se ae makaki tiempo ae atuno sangana Zimbabwe. Moro imo se makaki tine mufaro ae atuno sangana Zimbabwe. Moro imo usemose makaki tine mufaro ae atuno sangana Zimbabwe. Tiki tinoruma atirae tiki tinoruma atirae tiki tinoruma atirae tono sangana Zimbabwe. Masot anorora aurae masot anorora aurae masot anorora aurae tono sangana Zimbabwe. Ahoy Magita, ahoy. Ahoy Magita, ahoy.
Ahoy.
So allow me one more time to repeat this song. Ona ama yang ama yang ama yang Uta ama yang Gatli ama yang Ina So besides the issue of solidarity, this song reminds us that before we joined our political parties and before we took these fights that we are fighting right now, we are all Zimbabweans. We are not Zimbabweans because we were born in Zimbabwe, but we are Zimbabweans because Zimbabwe was born in us. So in everything that we do, we should leave space that reminds us that we are Zimbabweans and we are human beings before we joined our political parties. Before we are political beings, we are human beings and we are guided by principles of Ubuntu. Let us give space to coexistence that allows us to fight, not fight only with fists, but fight with ideas. And when ideas fail, yes, we understand. We are human beings. Sometimes geology gets angry on behalf of us, and the windows act in solidarity and allows them to semi-permeably pass through. But let us first fight with ideas. Thank you.
Ahoy, my youth. Ahoy. Ahoy, my comrades.
Ahoy.
All right, so thank you very much, Comrade Richard, for reminding us that behind the different struggles that we, for reminding us that in the different struggles that we pursue as youth, we also have a point of reference
from which we start our activism and putting energy and oomph into the meeting as far as trying to propel us to move forward and further. At this juncture, allow me to just make a short intervention in terms of trying to spotlight a very important issue, an issue that we've been talking about since morning, which is around youth eligibility for public office. So as part of this presentation, I'm going to be sharing with you a research that was undertaken by Nayo in the first quarter of the year, where it's trying to look into the issue of youth within Zimbabwe. Can you please move to the next slide? So we find that when we look at our country, by and large, the struggle for youth participation and representation for young people, it's very hard and it's very difficult. In most instances, when we reflect on our status quo, we might all realize that we are still yet to have young people sitting on the table. And I think this afternoon, we are quite excited in the feedback that was given by the staff from the committee clerk on youth, to say that the idea of the youth caucus in Parliament has since been approved. And I think it will begin to give a lot of credence and shift the paradigm in terms of addressing issues of youth participation within our country. Can you please move to the next slide? So when we look at youth eligibility, I'm sure for most of you the question then is like, so what is youth eligibility? Why youth eligibility? And basically we're talking of youth eligibility for public office. This is basically the qualification that youth need to have in order to be elected to various governmental bodies. And this depends on different jurisdictions. It would be based on qualifications, the kind of property that a person owns, education, and the last criteria there is age. And then also public office, the purpose of the presentation is any position in a public sector, whether in parliamentary, governmental, or municipal institutions. And I think given the intervention made by Eligibility earlier on, this would also encompass the different state institutions of our state house, etc. Then it's also very important there for us to note that youth representation remains very low. Whether you are in your political parties, you're in parliament, you're in business, you're in whatever sector, you find that there tends to be lower levels of youth representation. And of course, in Zimbabwe, we talk about youth, we're talking about people that are between the ages of 15 to 35. And then it is also very important there, I think also as a way of footnote, to note that 50% of the global population is under 30 years, yet only 2% of parliamentarians are under 30 years. This is when we look at the different parliaments that we have across the different jurisdictions that make the different countries in the world. And I think for those of us that stand for equality, for justice, you can clearly see the need for us to champion this cause. And then some of the key trends, the key factor is the gap between the minimum age at which young people can vote and the minimum age at which they can run as political candidates. And I think in our Zimbabwe context, the age, I think, gap is about 3 years. In other countries, for you to vote, you have to be 25 years, others 30 years, others 40 years. So it will also speak to how that gap would be higher within such jurisdictions. And then across the different countries also, the minimum voting age is more or less aligned across countries, whereas the age at which citizens can stand as candidates for public office varies widely. Already I think we've given reference to this to say that universal suffrage in most countries is at the age of 18. But for you to stand for public office, you have to wait a little bit longer. And then in a study conducted by the Interparliamentary Union in 2018, it concluded that in most countries, citizens must wait several years after gaining the right to vote before being eligible to run for parliamentary office. And I think the footnote there also gives us an idea
of what some of those age gaps are. And ultimately what this has done is that it has created an enormous gap between the youth electorate and political leaders. And in many ways, this also even explains why young people seem to be disengaged in issues of politics and governance, because when it comes to deciding who sits on the table and who makes the decision, it is as if young people do not qualify for those seats. And then in most developed countries, the age of eligibility for public office is 25, and there are several countries like Belgium, Italy, Lebanon, etc., where they use this. And then in advancing issues around youth eligibility for public office, it is also very important for us to understand international and also regional conventions which try to give emphasis to the need for us to move progressively towards equality and aligning ourselves to the age for universal suffrage, which is 18 years. For instance, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it recommends that every human being is entitled to the same human rights and fundamental freedoms, regardless of age, race, gender, religion, culture, political affiliation, or the country where one lives. And I think what this does is that it begs the question to then say that when we put together our constitutions, why then do we place limitations and discriminate the youth, especially when we continuously give preference to their innovativeness, to their diverseness, and to their contributions in terms of driving social transformation and development. Then there we also have got the African Youth Charter on participation, particularly Article 13. It talks about issues of youth development and empowerment in Africa. And then we also have got the African Charter on democracy, elections, and governance through Article 3 and 4, where it gives recognition or importance to the need for good governance, popular participation, the rule of law, and human rights. And one very particular thing which is very interesting about the African Charter on governance is that it also gives recognition to women and youth as special groups that also need some form of targeted support and attention when it comes to issues of governance and elections. And then I think coming home, which is pretty much where we've been since morning, we just had to do some of these slides so that for some of the young people that will be in this conference that don't have the perspective, they can also gain an understanding into, I think, where we are also hinging some of this work based on our own constitution. So we've got section 20 of the Zimbabwean constitution, which I think is the Jera when it comes to trying to advance and articulate issues that have to do with young people in our country. Whilst it is not legally binding, section 20, it gives a lot of direction in terms of policy and also programs of government. Hence, we tend to rely on this the most. So section 20 is very clear in terms of encouraging the government to ensure that young people are given opportunities to associate, to be represented, to participate in all spheres of life, including political, social, and economic. And I think this is also where, the importance of youth eligibility for public office also becomes very important. Then we also have section 67, clause 3 of the Constitution, which talks about the age, section 67 for clause 3 of the Constitution. It is more explicit in that it motivates those over the legal age of majority, which is 18 to stand for public office, and if elected, to hold such office. So despite our constitution being very progressive, speaking to the African Youth Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and other provisions, you find that it still has some minor gaps when it comes to issues that relate to youth eligibility for public office. You can move to the next slide. So the previous slide was just trying to demonstrate, I think, something which already has been given reference to by the members of parliament when they're speaking during the roundtable in the morning, to say that young people are underrepresented in parliament and in other, institutions of government. And then, as part of the findings that were also made during this particular study, they were able to identify some bottlenecks that stand in the way of driving youth participation. The first one there is poor grassroots participation that translates to little or no civil engagement. And I think this has got to do with the question that was raised by the members of Parliament in the morning to say that how far are you reaching with your work in as far as trying to reach to young people who are most marginalized. And I think this remains a gap area for everyone in this room, investing and directing their efforts towards working with more marginalized communities. And then the second one there is poor political financing. You understand that for you to stand and run for public office, you also need to go through different processes that require for you to have some form of financial muscle. It could be a nomination process, it could be staging one campaign, etc. And then, of course, the issue that I've been giving reference to, age caps, which creates which creates a gap between the age at which young people can vote and they can also be elected to stand for public office. For instance, for you to be a senator, for you to be a president, and also even for you to be appointed, for instance, within the judiciary, especially within the level of judges, etc., you have to be 40 years and above. Yet, for young people that are excelling in different sectors, in different ways, that also have competence based on merit and their qualifications to actually be able to deliver in some of those different public offices. And then, of course, there's the issue of politicization of public offices and state apparatus, which exacerbates exploitation of youth by politicians or even by anyone who has some form of leverage over young people in terms of trying to drive their own narratives. Poor confidence among the young people, I think Lady Sampson spoke eloquently on that as they were sharing and spotlighting on some of the work that they are doing in terms of trying to empower young people to engage and also work with the Parliament. And then the last one there is low levels within the youth on governance and constitutional processes. So this has got to do with literacy levels within and among the youth. And then the presentation, or rather the paper, also tried to come up with some solutions. The first one was the need for young people to understand the various legal, policy, and administrative provisions that relate to public office. For instance, as a young person, do I know what is needed for me to stand for public office? When Believe Quota was sharing about how he was able to approach the Parliament, he had to first understand the standing orders and rules of Parliament. As a young person, do I understand the standing rules and orders of Parliament? Because at times it is in our lack of understanding that we are incapacitated in terms of our engagement as the youth. And then another issue is also about young people having the internal drive and oomph when it comes to claiming the space and also ensuring that they stand out. And I think the members of Parliament also spoke to this quite passionately in the morning. And then the third issue there is that young people must not make the same mistake done by women of accepting the quota system, but speak to where the crux of the matter is. And I think for us as the young people, this is about leveling the political terrain to allow even for a woman, for a man, for a young person, for an elderly person, for a person with disability to stand for public office. It must not appear as if public office is a privilege for the few. And then the government should strengthen the capacity of persons with visual, hearing, and mental impairment by way of improving both political and the electoral landscape. For instance, right now we've got a quota system that allows for 2 persons with disabilities to sit within the Senate. But what about the local authorities, both in the rural and urban councils? What about the Parliament, etc.? So there is need for us also progressively to look at how we can be inclusive of persons with disabilities. And then there's also need for the civil society organizations to invest in working with youth, where they can be a unifier between the young and the old. Because at times we are seen as being too confrontational, but I think the conversations that we had this morning were quite progressive, because then there was appreciation of the young and also the elderly, and the need for us to work together and be responsible in discharging our different roles and responsibilities when it comes to driving national development. And then the last one there is around political parties, which in most cases are dominated by young people. The political parties play a very important role in terms of trying to ensure that young people have the opportunities to stand up and to also be more visible when it comes to public office. Then allow me to end the presentation by just highlighting some of the notable campaigns which it made reference to, where young people were able to organize in their own home countries and speak to a particular issue around youth eligibility for public office. The first one there is from Turkey, where working together with their civil society organizations, young people came up with the Young MPs Now campaign, which lobbied for Turkish authorities to lower eligibility age from 25 years in 2007 to 18 years. And consequently, the 2018 elections witnessed the highest ever, witnessed the youngest ever MP candidate. You can imagine an 18-year-old female high school student becoming a member of parliament. Already in Zimbabwe, we have got the junior councils, we also have the junior parliaments. It's a practice that we are doing that we simply need to scale up and take seriously in terms of the spaces where policy, law, and decisions are made. And then in the African context, Kenya is one good example, which has lowered the required minimum age of becoming a candidate, allowing for young people to stand for more public offices. And in Kenya, this is also witnessing a steady growth in more and more young people actually making it for public office. And then we've got the famous Not Too Young to Run campaign, which was undertaken in Nigeria. And through this, they were able to lower the age for eligibility for parliamentary representatives to 25 years and the age for the presidents from 40 to 35 years in 2017 and 2018 respectively. And if you look at even the elections which they have had following these changes to their constitution, you'd also see significantly a higher number of young people standing for public office. And here it is also very important for me to footnote that much of the progressive world has embraced the innovativeness of youth for their energy, vibrancy, adaptability, etc. And the question then for us is, how are we faring as a country and as Zimbabwe? Thank you very much. Allow me, as we move forward, and also before we break for lunch, to call upon Ms. Jera from Tasa Youth Forum to also shed a bit of more light into what are some of the key asks that young people are asking for as part of the Youth Eligibility for Public Office campaign. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jera. I'm from Tasa Youth Forum and Community Empowerment Trust. Allow me at this juncture to thank the National Association of Youth Organizations, Nayo. We have held some social accountability platforms with youths. We led the Leave No Youth Behind campaign in 2018, leading to 13% youth participating and voting from the 6% we had voted in 2013, as well as the peace building campaigns and conflict management skills trainings involving 500 youth in Tasa. We are also working with Nayo in having some constitutional hubs where we would discuss much about the Constitution of Zimbabwe, what is it all about and why is it important for the youths in Zimbabwe to know about it and which sections that are more important for them to know. So in Montasa, we have 35 participants who are taking part in this constitutional house. And I remember last time, sometime last year, we were given the chance to interact with the duty bearers in Montasa. I remember us having the Honorable Tsunga and Councillor Mawoyo from Ward 21 in Jera. So I would like to thank Nayo for that. It has helped us to have a lot of youth taking part in public spaces, especially them going into the public hearings and the amendment bills. So I would like to thank them for that. So moving on to my presentation, here I have the explanatory note on the youth eligibility for public office campaign. So the campaign is hinged on several key asks which fall into two main categories. So allow me to start with the first one now. The increasing representation of youth in terms of government and public office, removal of discriminatory age caps within the 2013 Constitution to respect and uphold provisions of Section 56 Clause 3. The section mentioned that no one has the right not to be treated in an unfairly discriminatory manner on several grounds, which includes age. At 18, we vote others into power, but we cannot stand for public office to be elected. This is discriminatory. There is need to remove age caps, which bar youth from standing for public office. Adoption of affirmative action measures such as introduction of quota system as a temporal measures to address historical injustice and exclusion of youth in all tiers of government with full consultation of youth. Specifically, the campaign is pushing for a 25% increase in the number of youth occupying public office, includes all types of government and contested public office as per the Constitution. These tiers includes national government, provincial and metropolitan councils and local authorities, which include both urban and rural councils. Government of Zimbabwe to commission a national study on youth access to public office at all types of government and for contested public office positions as per the Constitution. The second one, enabling environment for youth to access public office. Adoption of intra-party institutional reforms at the political party level, which level the playing field for aspiring youth politicians to gain access to public office. This may include quota system, financial for youth candidates, among other measures adopted at the party level. Creation of a youth caucus within the Parliament of Zimbabwe to dedicate its focus on strengthening and increasing youth representation in parliamentary, governance, and national development processes. Most parliaments have the caucus, which is important in protecting and advancing the progressive realization of youth rights. Reforms to the Electoral Act of Zimbabwe to level the playing field for youth aspiring to access public office in line with Section 56 Clause 6 and gain access to financing set aside for political parties. Political parties receiving financing is such financing accessible to youth. Creation of inclusive and non-partisan mechanisms to protect youth from exploitation and all forms of abuse in political and electoral cycle and related processes. This is in line with Section 20 of the Constitution, Clause 1E, which calls on government to protect youth from harmful cultural practices, exploitation, and all forms of abuse. I raise my case. Thank you.
Jera. At this point in time, we're not going to take any questions. I'm sure we have tried to stretch the morning session as far and as further as we can. So we're going to break for lunch. It's 1:30, and then we'll come back here at 2:30, where we'll spend another hour before we bring the conference to an end. We would encourage you and also invite you to join us after lunch for the last session. We are having our lunch at.
Please share the Facebook. Please share.
So we are having our lunch at the Pavilion restaurant, first floor. I think when you leave this room, it means you have to go up the stairs, ne? So just